Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we take your sources, unpack them, and really pull out the key insights to help you get informed fast. Today, we're tackling some pretty fascinating and maybe intense source material. It's excerpts from an audio called Secret Behind Obama's First Stop at Married Gay Couple's Home in CA. And it's definitely coming from a specific right-wing news viewpoint. Now, just to be clear up front, our job today isn't to say if these claims are right or wrong. Not at all. We're here to unpack what this particular source is saying. We'll look at the connections it makes, kind of like peeling an onion layer by layer. We're examining the specific points, the alleged facts, the publications this speaker uses.
Exactly. The aim here is to just lay out the narrative as presented in this audio. We want to give you a really clear picture of its content, how the argument is built. That way you, the listener, can engage with it critically, knowing what's actually being claimed without us adding our own spin.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source kicks things off by pointing to what it calls, well, unusual circumstances around Obama leaving the White House. Specifically, his very first trip after leaving office. He stayed with a married gay couple out in California, and the source flags this as very significant. That's the term they use.
Right, and you see immediately how the source takes this initial event, Obama's trip, and starts building something much bigger around it. It's less about the trip itself and more about using it as a launch pad for these broader, often quite personal allegations. It's a pretty common way to frame an argument.
Yeah, it pivots almost instantly. The source connects that trip to an alleged incident with Michelle Obama. It claims she, quote, bailed shortly after they got to the couple's house, stormed off to Richard Branson's island alone, supposedly after having to sit in the rain. The source calls it a typical Michelle hissy fit. And then, according to the source, Obama's team later said he was also on the plane and eventually joined her there.
And see, that quick jump from the trip details to Michelle Obama's alleged reaction is interesting. The source uses that specific story to then bring up older, sort of long-standing allegations about their personal lives. Like, it claims there were a lot of questions about their wedding, suggesting maybe they lived apart for years before the presidency. It even brings up a quote attributed to Michelle Obama saying it was tough being a single mother when Barack was a state senator. The source definitely interprets that through its own specific lens.
Okay, and then things really, escalate,
Yeah.
according to this source. It starts talking about claims from people identified as members of Obama's former church in Chicago, Trinity United Church of Christ. It names 3 men, Larry Bland, Nate Spencer, and Alex Oprint. The claim is they were all gay and romantically involved with Obama. The source mentions one of their mothers reportedly called the situation part of a down-low club at the church, that term implying, secret homosexual activity. And the source does say, not knocking anybody's lifestyle, just relaying the facts as I've been told them, but then immediately uses these claims to, quote, knock Obama for the lies that he's told and the crimes that he's committed.
Yeah, that's a really key rhetorical move there. Disclaiming judgment while simultaneously using the claim as evidence for a serious accusation. And it doesn't stop there. The source goes on to claim that all 3 of these men were murdered mysteriously, and that these supposed murders are still unsolved. It specifically mentions Alex Oprint's mother supposedly speaking about her son's alleged involvement with Obama on the radio show Coast to Coast, which, often deals with conspiracies and the paranormal.
So the implication is pretty heavy, even if it's not explicitly stated.
Exactly. It strongly implies a connection without directly accusing Obama of being involved in the deaths.
Okay, so from these very personal and frankly startling claims, the source then pivots again, pretty dramatically actually. It shifts to claims about Obama's basic legitimacy, his background. It asserts he's allegedly used 3 different Social Security numbers in his life. And the one he uses now, the source claims, is a Connecticut number, doesn't match Hawaii, and is, quote, allegedly paired with one of Michelle's former or late relatives.
Yeah.
That really widens the scope of the allegations.
It does. And right there, the source weaves in the birther issue, which is a known conspiracy theory. It claims Obama presented a fake birth certificate. It cites a report from former Sheriff Joe Arpaio, who apparently claimed he determined it was forged with help from some specialists.
Right.
And it also points to an Alabama court case in 2012. The claim is Obama's staff submitted 3 separate birth certificates to the state. The source says the Alabama Supreme Court basically punted on the case because Obama was already president. But the source really emphasizes, nobody has 3 different birth certificates unless one of them is fake, actually 2 of them. That's the argument.
Okay, so quite a web being spun there. Let's circle back then to the question that sort of kicked this all off. According to this specific source, why did Obama make that first post-presidency stop with the gay couple in California? The source gives a few reasons. First,
Yeah, what's the source's explanation?
first, it suggests Obama was signaling to his supporters that he was, in their words, the first gay president.
Hmm.
Though the speaker does say they won't get into claims about Michelle Obama being a man, focusing instead on things they feel are, quote, much more easy to verify based on their posts.
Interesting distinction they make there. What's the second reason?
Second, the source argues Obama wanted to make it, quote, loud and clear to the LGBTQ community that he's their guy and that he'd keep advocating for them. And it connects this directly to a claim about Obama prioritizing funding for sex change operations for veterans with gender dysphoria through the VA,
Okay.
while at the same time claiming 238,000 veterans died waiting for VA care. The source uses this comparison to make a strong point about Obama's alleged priorities.
Right. A very stark comparison presented there. And the third reason?
The third reason is about the location itself, California. The source says it's no coincidence he went there. It calls California the LGBT capital of the country and claims that, quote, any stances against Trump are more likely than not going to originate there.
So painting California as a sort of base of operations for opposition.
Exactly. The source even brings up an alleged proposal for California to secede, linking it to Trump's election. It claims 1 in 3 Californians are open to secession because Trump won, and the source suggests Obama will back, quote, any of these California initiatives that's going to give Trump an incredibly hard time.
So framing that first trip, not just symbolically but strategically as well, setting up future political conflict.
Precisely. Now, having laid all that groundwork, the
Yeah.
personal stuff, the background questions, the reasons for the trip, the source then shifts gears into what it explicitly calls more of the nefarious material.
Okay. Nefarious material.
Yes. It claims Barack Obama is leading the quote-unquote Purple Revolution on behalf of George Soros. Soros, the billionaire investor, often a figure in these kinds of narratives.
Right.
This Purple Revolution, according to the source, is financed by Soros and is meant to be, essentially, the second American Revolution.
Wow. Okay. A second American Revolution. And how does the source see this playing out?
It says the battlefield will be over information, and it emphasizes a key theme. He who controls the information controls.
That's a central claim. And it connects, I imagine, to media criticism.
It does. The source argues that mainstream media is, quote, trying to alter reality with nonstop fake news. He gives an example, claiming the Mexican government called out the Associated Press for fake news about Trump planning to invade Mexico. And based on this, the source concludes that the, quote, real task of leading the communist takeover of the U.S. is definitely falling on Obama, alleging that everything he did was intended to, quote, dismantle the United States from the inside out.
That's a huge accusation. Dismantling the U.S. from the inside and connecting it to communism.
Yes, a very strong indictment of his entire presidency, this fundamental transformation of America he spoke about. The source claims it was actually, quote, done to start very big, extremely violent, and uniquely retrogressive policies. Goes further, claiming Obama, quote, turned the Middle East into a dystopian, post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Wow.
And also, quote, attempted to restart the Cold War with Russia with nonstop false accusations that still have yet to be proven. Just sweeping negative claims about his global impact.
So with all these massive claims, how does the source justify them? Why does it think listeners shouldn't be shocked by this?
Good question. It points to a video apparently included in a post they linked to. In this video, Obama supposedly confirms that the character Frank in his book Dreams of My Father is Frank Marshall Davis.
And Frank Marshall Davis is identified by the source as
a well-known communist with an FBI file. The source claims Obama says in this video that, quote, everything he learned about white racism, he learned from a communist Frank Marshall Davis.
I see.
The source interprets this as proof Obama was, quote, groomed his entire life to be a firebrand and devout communist. This connection to Davis is presented as sort of the key to understanding everything else.
So that alleged admission is positioned as the foundation for the entire communist takeover narrative.
That seems to be the implication. The source then calls the U.S. under Obama its first banana republic, using that term to imply, corruption and instability. It also claims that protesters, who the source calls domestic terrorists, were empowered during his presidency, linking his leadership directly to civil unrest.
Okay. And this leads into claims about deception, particularly towards the Black community.
Yes. The source argues that despite the hope and change message, Obama actually, quote, destroyed the economy for Black Americans, claiming they're infinitely worse off now than before he took office.
Does it offer any specifics on that?
It cites some statistics attributed to the commentator Larry Elder. Claims like 20% of Black individuals are underwater in their homes, and their net worth is down almost 10% for Blacks compared to 1% for whites.
Hmm.
And it notes this happened despite their continued support for him. So a claim of economic damage coupled with perceived political betrayal.
A very stark economic picture painted there.
Definitely. So after all this,
Mm.
the personal claims, the background questions, the political conspiracy, the economic arguments, the source arrives at what it calls the only one choice left
Which is?
for then-President Trump to prosecute Obama for alleged, quote, crimes he's committed, including things like crimes against humanity, war crimes, high treason.
Prosecution for treason. That's significant. Does it claim there's evidence or witnesses?
It claims there are plenty of witnesses. It names several high-ranking military figures, General Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General McInerney, General Valley, Admiral Ace Lyons.
Figures known for being quite critical of the Obama administration.
Yes. The source says these figures have outright accused Obama of treason, colluding with the enemy, providing weapons to the enemy.
Okay. And anything else used to bolster this call for prosecution?
It adds a claim that Obama had an itchy trigger finger with drone strikes, resulting in civilian casualties.
Right.
And the conclusion drawn is that if the Trump administration doesn't prosecute Obama, and also Hillary Clinton, it essentially says they're above the law, which the source calls unacceptable.
Setting a dangerous precedent in their view.
Exactly. And it loops back to California again, calling it the perfect staging ground, not just for LGBT advocacy, but for Obama's supposed purple revolution against Trump.
So California is framed as the center of this resistance.
Yes. And it points to Hollywood, accusing it of using, quote, politics of personal destruction in the election. It does mention Matthew McConaughey as an exception, someone who apparently called for people to grow up.
An interesting aside there.
And then just to sort of tie a final bow on it all, the source throws in connections between companies like Facebook, Intel, Google, DARPA.
DARPA, the Defense Research Agency.
That's the one. And the CIA, claiming their origins and, quote, seed money are well documented, implying some kind of deep state or coordinated network.
Wow. So connecting tech, defense, and intelligence agencies into this larger picture.
Seems so. And it ends with a really stark warning. If people don't take a stand now against figures like Obama and Clinton, then listeners have, quote, nobody to blame but ourselves for the way this all ends.
A very direct call to action, or at least a warning.
Absolutely. And that core message echoes one last time. He who controls the information controls. So we've just walked through quite a complex and, frankly, intense narrative presented in this source material. We looked at the specific claims about Obama's post-presidency, his personal life, the alleged political agenda. We saw how the source really weaves together all these different threads, personal stories, background questions, geopolitical conspiracies to build one very specific picture.
Yeah, and our aim, like we said, was just to clearly lay out what this source claims, giving you the details, the connections it draws, without us stepping in to agree or disagree. What's really striking is just the sheer range of allegations it pulls together, trying to link things that seem quite separate into this one big narrative of influence and deception.
It definitely shows how powerful storytelling can be, right? How you can assemble different bits of information, some might be familiar, some less so, and frame them to really push a specific viewpoint, the way it moves from, personal details right up to these huge international conspiracies. That escalation is really key to how this source constructs its argument.
It is, and it makes you think. The source itself says who controls the information controls. If you accept that premise for a moment, how does understanding this particular narrative, even if you find it completely unbelievable, how does understanding how it's built help you analyze other information, other narratives you come across every day?
That's a great question. What really jumped out at you as we went through this, thinking about the structure of arguments, even ones maybe you don't agree with? How does dissecting them help sharpen your own critical thinking? Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope breaking down this specific source gave you a clearer picture of its claims and maybe spark some more questions for you. Until next time.